Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the July 25th, 2024 meeting for the City of Clovis Planning Commission. Before we get started, I'd like to call for a moment of silence. We just received news that one of our fellow commissioners who had served our community for several years has passed. So I'd like to have a minute of silence. Thank you. Members of the public are encouraged to participate in meetings by accessing the webcast on the city website, providing written comment at the same website, participating by phone, or attending the Planning Commission meeting in person. I'd like to call the meeting to order. If you would join me, Commissioner Hinkle will be leading us in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Secretary, if you can call for the roll.
Yes. Commissioner Bedstead.
Here.
Commissioner Hatcher.
Here.
Commissioner Hebert.
Here.
Commissioner Hinkle.
Here.
And Chair Antuna.
Here. Okay, I'd like to call a motion for the approval of the minutes from the June 27th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Hatcher and seconded by Commissioner Hebert to approve the June 27th, 2024 Planning Commission minutes. Commissioner Hatcher?
Yes.
Commissioner Hebert?
Yes.
Commissioner Hinkle?
Yes.
Commissioner Bedstead?
Yes.
And Chair Antuna?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Do we have any Commission Secretary comments?
Yes, just two. The first one being that staff developed a new PowerPoint intro that we would like to use moving forward at all Planning Commission meetings, designed to provide more information to the public regarding the background as to how the meeting is run, a little information about the Commission and who you are, and also providing the information on the public process, public hearing process. The second item is she just wanted to circle back with Commissioner Hinkle. At the last meeting, you made a comment about receiving some comments from neighbors who live next to Clovis Nissan. She just wanted to let you know that we reached out to our administration, and they did send a formal correspondence to the dealership asking them to comply with their conditions. And that concludes my comments.
Very well. Do we have any Planning Commission member comments?
Yes. I would like to thank the Clovis City Council, Planning Department, employees of the City of Clovis for all of their hard work. Clovis was recognized as one of the top 49 cities in Western United States and one of the top 49 in United States and one of 15 in Western United States. Thank you all for all your hard work, everything you've done to make it the city it is.
Very good. Okay, we're going to go ahead and, I'm sorry, did you comment? No. Oh. We're going to go ahead and take items from the floor. This is an opportunity for the members of the public to address the Planning Commission on any matter within the Planning Commission jurisdiction that is not listed on the agenda. If you would like to speak, please step up to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and in order for everyone to be heard, please limit your comment to 3 minutes. If you'd like to be placed on the agenda, sorry about that. If you'd like to be placed on the agenda for an item for a specific topic, you should contact the Planning Division and submit correspondence at least 10 days prior to the desired date of appearance. Do we have any comments from the floor? Okay, hearing none. And before I go on to the opening the public hearing, I did want to state, just because there are several members of the community in our chamber today, I just wanted to go over the PowerPoint just to state kind of the process of our meetings, which is I'll introduce the item, staff will present, and then there will be any, the commission will ask staff any clarifying questions. Then I open the public hearing, and the applicant will come to speak. And then if we have questions of the applicant, we'll ask them then. Then I'll invite people to come to the podium to speak in support of the item or in opposition of the item. And then the applicant will have an opportunity to rebut, and then I'm going to close the hearing. So everyone gets an opportunity to speak and be heard this evening. Okay, having that said now, I'm going to go ahead and introduce that item. Where's my agenda? Okay. Item 1, consider items associated with approximately 1.73 acres of land located along the east side of Osmond Avenue and the west side of Barron Avenue, north of 2nd Street, Clovis 135, Osmond LP, owner and applicant. Consider approval of the general plan amendment 2024-004, a resolution recommending the City Council consideration for an environmental finding of a CEQA exemption from further environmental review and an amendment to the general plan to redesignate the subject property from the medium-density residential, which is 4 to 7 dwelling units per acre designation, to the medium-high density of 7 to 15 dwelling units per acre designation. Item B, consider approval of rezone 2024-003, a resolution recommending the City Council's consideration of the rezone of the subject property from the R1, which is single-family residential low-density zone district, to an R2, which is medium-high density zone district. Liz, Assistant Planner, presenting.
Good evening. Thank you, Commissioners. As Chair described, the project is located on the east side of Osmond Avenue and the west side of Barron Avenue, north of 2nd Street. The site is comprised of 3 parcels totaling approximately 1.73 acres. The site is mostly vacant with the exception of a dilapidated building that was formerly used as a church. The surrounding land uses include a ponding basin to the north, single-family residential to the east and south, and multifamily to the west. The request is to amend the general plan land use designation from medium-density residential to medium-high density residential. It should be noted that on July 1st, City Council adopted land use designation modifications to the medium-high and high-density residential ranges. So beginning August 1st, the medium-high density residential will be maxed at 20 dwelling units per acre. The rezone is requesting to change the zoning designation from R1 single-family residential low density to R2 multifamily medium high density. It is important to clarify that the entitlements for Planning Commission's consideration tonight are the GPA and rezone, which would, for future development, would be subject to the medium high and R2 development standards. These are outlined here in green. The density, again, will be between 7.1 and 20 dwelling units per acre, and in this case, that would amount to between 12 and 35 units for this parcel. The development would be limited to a maximum of 35 feet tall, 2 stories. The GPA and rezone would initiate the applicant's proposal for a 47-unit, 100% senior affordable housing project. The proposal for the project will be reviewed at the site plan review, which is staff level. Although the applicant's proposal will be reviewed at staff level, I will give a brief overview of the project. As I stated, it's a 47-unit, 100% affordable senior housing project that will be comprised of 44 one-bedroom units, 2 two-bedroom units, and a 3-bedroom manager unit. The site has been designed with 2 points of access, one along Osmond Avenue and one along Barron Avenue, in order to facilitate traffic to either side of the development. The project proposes 47 uncovered stalls and has been designed as one building with covered walkways. The overall height of the building will be 3 stories, with the eastern portion being 2 stories. The project will provide ample open space with a central courtyard. The developer held 2 neighborhood meetings. The first was held on January 24th, where they described their initial development proposal of 51 units of affordable senior housing. The neighbors did voice some concerns regarding the 3-story building height, increase of traffic in the neighborhood, and potential for overflow parking onto the streets. As a result of that meeting, the developer did modify the project, so they reduced the height on the eastern elevation to 2 stories in order to provide a more compatible transition with the single-family residences. Then they held, and that resulted in the reduction of 4 units from the project. They held the second neighborhood meeting on June 26th, and there they described to the neighborhood the modifications to the project. At this meeting, the neighbors voiced similar concerns to the first meeting, which were the 3-story building height, increase of traffic, and overflow parking into the neighborhood. Staff did evaluate neighborhoods' concerns. So in regards to the density, overall density of the project and the 3-story height, again, it is important to note that that is provided to the project because it is eligible for a state law density bonus and incentives. So, and that's because it's 100% affordable and providing senior housing. Development with the proposed GPA and rezone would result in a limit of 35 units for the subject property, which is consistent to the developments to the west. And that would be in absence of any type of affordable housing project. In regards to the traffic, the applicant did provide a traffic study that evaluated the 47-unit proposal. And again, it's important to note that the 47 units is more than that would be allowed of the project if it was developed at the development standards, which would be 35 units. The traffic study concluded that the project would generate 154 vehicle trips with 10 a.m. peak trips and 12 p.m. peak trips. As a comparison to the existing land use designation, there would be generated of 104 trips per day, with 9 of those being AM peak trips and 11 PM peak trips. Therefore, the result is that there was minimal change. Additionally, because the project generates less than 500 trips per day and is located in a low VMT area, per city guidelines, the project is anticipated to produce less than significant transportation impact. In regards to parking, because the project is eligible for the state law density bonus, they would be required to provide 49 parking stalls. However, they are proposing to use an incentive that is afforded to them through the density bonus to propose 47 stalls. The applicant did provide 2 parking studies that reviewed 5 comparable senior housing projects, and from that data, it was concluded that the ratio or the rate was 0.8 per unit, which is less than what they're proposing at a 1-to-1 ratio. We did mail out notices for this public hearing on July 10th, and staff did not receive any written comments or phone calls about the project. staff has determined that the rezone and general plan amendment is consistent with the findings as stated in the staff report. The project would provide development to an underused property, provide an alternate housing for the area, and count towards the city's housing stock. Therefore, staff is recommending the Planning Commission approve a resolution recommending to the City Council the determination of the CEQA exemption and redesignate the subject property from medium density to medium high density with the rezone from R1 to R2. And I'm available for any questions.
Do you have any questions for staff? Go ahead.
Yeah, I did. So you got no response to the 710 notice that you sent out on July 10th?
That's correct. I didn't receive anything in writing, and I didn't receive any phone calls either.
Okay. And then I'm looking at, I guess there was a meeting in June,
Mm-hmm.
there were some concerns then. So were those addressed, those concerns then, or what happened between then?
So the concerns were evaluated per staff's evaluation. So the concerns were the density, the height, the traffic, and the overflow parking. So part of our evaluation was to determine the impact from those. And per the presentation, there would be minimal or less significant impact from the traffic. For the parking, again, the parking would be required if developed at the R2 standards to abide by the development code. In this case, the reduction in parking is due to the density bonus and the incentives. Yeah.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Okay. I have a few questions. On the density bonus, is that a percentage or what, how does that, can you explain how that works?
Yes. So the state law and the municipal code do evaluate, depending on how the project is proposed, the amount that they are allotted for the density bonus. In this case, the project is 100% affordable and a senior housing project, so they are allotted an 80% density bonus. So the 47 units is under what they would be allowed if they wanted to fulfill or use the total 80% density bonus.
So if it's rezoned, the max was 35. So 80% of that, they could add an additional 28 units. So that could bring the total to 63, and we're saying it would be capped at 47.
That's what they're proposing. That portion of review is not being reviewed tonight. The GPA and the rezone would just allocate the maximum for those designations. So if the project was, for example, proposing a less amount of affordable housing, let's say they were proposing 20% affordable housing, their density bonus would be reliant on what they were proposing. So just in this case, they're getting 80% because the type is 100% and senior. So it could vary dependent on how the project was proposed.
Okay. So if, excuse me, so if with the current designation, medium density residential, the max per acre is 7. So
yes.
If they built it as is, I'm going to round up here. I realize it's not 2 acres, but let's say that you could get 14 units on the existing lot with the existing designation, then they would be eligible for an 80% on that as long as it's 100% affordable and seniors.
That's correct in this situation, yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure I understand how the density bonus works. And then as far as parking, the report indicates that it was going to be 1 parking stall per unit, but you're saying that's going to be reduced?
No, I can clarify. So with the density bonus, they are afforded an automatic parking reduction. So at an automatic parking reduction, they would be required 49 stalls. So that is just the allowance with the state law bonus. However, they're requesting a deviation from that 49 to propose 47. So they have a number of incentives that are granted to them. So they get 5 incentives, and they're going to use one of those incentives to reduce the parking. And that's all. All of those aspects for incentives are reviewed at the staff level through the site plan review.
Okay. Part of what I wrestle with, maybe my fellow commissioners do as well. We're only seeing the general plan amendment here. If this goes forward, is it approved with a condition that only this project or this proposal can be built there, or we're changing the general plan, and if the project is scrapped, someone else or the same developer could come in and propose an entirely different project?
So there are no conditions tied to the GPA and rezone. So when that's modified, that would be subject to the development standards of that land use designation and that zoning designation. There's details of this project that are exceeding those requirements or deviating from those requirements. So I can understand that, but they would be required to comply with the development code. So in this case, for an example, parking could be a concern. If this project went away and another 47-unit project came in, they would have, and it was market rate, they would have to provide the parking that would be required of the code. So they would have to abide by the code standards for the land use designation and the zoning.
Yeah, and I'll just say this and then we can move on, but you know, we've seen, some of us on the commission anyway, have seen this project site come before us once before. I think it was a different developer or owner at that time. And so there was a lot of density being proposed then, and I think that was voted down, just being non-compatible with the area. So I like the idea of the affordable housing and the senior occupied. I just want to make sure we understand that is what's prompting this rezone, essentially, but yet there's no relationship between the project and this general plan amendment at this time. It's hypothetical. This is what we would like to do if the commission was to vote to change that land use designation. Maybe a question for the applicant, but are there going to be elevators within here, within this facility, to be able to get down?
Yes, to my knowledge, there's 2 elevators, and then they can correct me if I'm wrong.
And do we expect that can it only be occupied by seniors, or will they be allowed to have a caregiver?
It'll be deed restricted to seniors, but I can let them talk about the details of how that works when they speak, but it will be deed restricted to seniors.
Okay. I think you've answered my questions. Thank you.
Liz, I guess I know I need a clarifying question because we gave the example of market rate for 47 units, but I thought the 47 units were being allowed because of the density bonus, because we're restricting the max. What is the maximum unit, right?
Yes, okay. I'm sorry, I misspoke.
Okay. That
is correct. The maximum would be 35 units.
Okay, so if this project went away and someone came new to build, the maximum they would be able to build is 32 units.
No, 35.
I'm sorry, 35 units.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure if there was market rate.
If now, it was,
but if we had, this project went away and we had something similar where they were doing 100% affordable housing, they would have the benefit of the same, being able to receive the same benefit, correct?
Yes, they would be reviewed for their eligibility to receive the state density bonus, and it's also within our code.
Okay, and just contingent on whatever the project was.
Correct, it could vary.
This one just happens to be senior and affordable housing 100%, so they get this amount.
That is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, do we have any other?
If this project was sold sometime in the future, would the deed restrictions still apply to the property?
If the property was sold, so the deed restrictions are tied to the affordable housing project. So again, if the affordable housing project went away, there is no requirement to build that. So they would just be limited at the 35 units.
No, I'm saying if the project's built, and then it was sold, let's say, in 3 years from now.
Yes, it would remain senior affordable for a time period.
Okay, thank you.
Liz, what's that time period? 20 years, 25, 10?
I will defer to the applicant.
Okay. Thank you.
In my experience, I think with the deed restrictions regarding affordable housing projects like this, it would probably be something like 45 to 55 years. But I'd have to double check on the statute, but my understanding, at least when it comes to deed restricted projects, would be like 45 to 55 years.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions of staff?
If you could get that information to the city council, I think it would be important for them.
All right. Any more questions for staff? We're good? Very good. I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing, and I'd like to invite the applicant to speak. Step up to the podium, state your name, address. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Lori Doyle, 3128 Willow Avenue, Suite 101, Clovis. I'm with Affordable Housing Development Corporation. We are co-developer of the 135 Osmond property in front of you this evening. Affordable Housing Development Corporation has been in business for about 40 years. We are an affordable housing developer throughout the state of California with headquarters here in Clovis. We have about 600 units here in Clovis already of affordable housing that you're probably familiar with. And I'm here to answer any questions regarding the rezone, and I wrote down a couple. I might have forgotten one or two, but I'll go ahead and introduce my partner here, or let him introduce himself, and then we can go and take those questions.
Good evening. My name is Michael Duarte with Better Opportunities Builder. It's a nonprofit affordable housing developer that focuses on affordable housing here in Fresno County. Partnered with HDC and independently done a number of affordable projects throughout the county. And address is 1331 Fulton Street here in downtown Fresno. Look, do you mind if we jump right into it and answer a couple of the questions that we noted?
Sure.
I think the first was whether there was elevators. I want to confirm that there's 2 elevators serving the property. All of the units would be accessible. In terms of how there's certainty around if there's it's only going to be seniors, the property would be restricted on title to only serve seniors 62 and older.
Oh.
I believe that the third question was around whether if the property, if once built and if sold in the future, whether the restrictions would remain in place, and they are recorded against title for the financing that would be necessary for a project like this is going to carry at least a minimum of 55 years restriction. And yes, they would, because it's recorded on title, it would continue to be in place in the event of a sale.
Were there any other questions we missed? I think there was one about occupancy as well, right? Who could live there? How do you guarantee?
Yeah, I think we
asked that
a couple different ways. You mentioned the 62 or older. So an individual that is occupying these properties, I see a lot of them are proposed as 1 bedroom, but are they allowed to have a caregiver live on site with them that's younger than 62?
Yes, I think what we find is a lot of our residents that move in tend to stay for long periods of time and age in place. And from time to time, there is a need, given their health conditions, that they need a caregiver. In those instances, that would be a reasonable combination that we would make, but there's a process for that. They would have to get certain documentation in place and verification with a doctor that they indeed need a caregiver. And there's different levels of that. If there's a caregiver that comes during the day versus somebody that actually is a live-in aide, that documentation, to answer the question, yes, it is possible. There is a vetting and documentation process for that.
How about overnight guests for short or long-term duration? Will they be allowed to stay there?
There are provisions within the lease that's pretty standard that they are allowed to have guests, but there's limitations on number of nights that could stay, sort of throughout the year or consecutively. So that's pretty standard in the industry to allow for guests, but it's, there's limitations on that.
And I'll just say, and maybe you can help me understand from, sounds like you have a lot of other properties, but the parking is a concern for me. When I see even just the one-to-one, and then the idea that, you know, with the density bonus and being able to kind of shorten that, if you have caregivers, they're likely individuals with vehicles. Some of these folks that occupy the property may not have vehicles, so it may net out overnight guests and others. So what is the, I guess, help me understand what's behind the one-to-one ratio or approximate one-to-one ratio without any other overflow for folks visiting or bringing, you know, groceries that are being ordered, et cetera.
Yeah, and we have concerns as well. There's, you know, the standards set by the development code, and there's standards of a marketability that we're concerned about. We're long-term homeowners, and we want to make sure that the properties function and are marketable long-term. But we did a survey of 7 different properties, at least one here in Clovis, a couple in Kingsburg, Sanger, and Fresno area that are senior, very similar properties. We asked our property management teams to go out and do surveys, random days, different times of the day, so mornings, afternoons, evenings, weekends, to do a survey of counting all vehicles in the parking lot, regardless. We don't know if they're residents or they're guests, if they're live-in aides, just counting all vehicles, period, on the site. And we have an average of 0.68 vehicles present on average during all days of the week, all periods of the day. So we feel comfortable with that. I also think one of the reasons we like this location is proximity to several amenities like the senior center, restaurants, other shopping opportunities, and so that further makes us comfortable with the parking ratio.
And that study was also done into the late evenings. I know if you frequent a hotel or apartment complex or others,
So they did them at different times of the day, and we gave specific instructions to the property managers to go weekends, weekend nights, weekday nights, mornings. So it's a staff has this, so we're happy for them to share the spreadsheet with you. But one of them is actually Silver Ridge, which is just off of DeWitt and Sierra. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with that, the old Clovis Community Hospital. So that property, we rehabbed the hospital itself, and we built new on that campus about 25 years ago, I think it was. So that's one of the properties that we surveyed. Again, same type of unit mix, mostly 1s, some 2s, same affordability levels, because they're going through the same financing, the low-income housing tax credits, which have about the same affordability levels across the board.
last question for me, and others may have questions, but how do you come up with the density proposal, right? So you're restricted to 35. You've made mention that you would seek the density bonus that's allowed given the project being 100% affordable and senior occupied, but what was your rationale behind saying this is what our target is?
Well, our target was actually higher. I don't know if you recall in the presentation. We actually had 51 units we presented in January to the neighborhood, and there was some pretty prominent concern on the east side of Barron and First area, which is really where most of the single family lies in that neighborhood. And so we kind of went back to the drawing board with our architect here, who's here with us tonight as well, and talked about those concerns. We can't go all two-story financial feasibility-wise. We could not go all two-story here or even all single-story. It doesn't make sense for us to operate something that small with the operational costs and the rent so low. So we made a concession to take that east side of the property down to two-story and eliminated some of those units to get where we were. So there's no really rhyme or reason. We kind of came up with the idea based on the neighborhood and what we thought would fit. We want to take advantage of the ponding basin there, also with the multifamily that's on the west side of our property, and try to integrate into the single family by doing that step down into the two-story.
Yeah, I appreciate you addressing the three-story.
Yeah.
That was kind of where I was going with, was there an opportunity to get into a two-story makeup? So it sounds like no.
Yeah, no, not for the whole property.
I just want to also note that even under you're considering the R2 zoning, it would allow it to 63. So we weren't really trying to stretch this as much as possible. It's really what feels good and still makes marketability sense to us. And just know there's the property to the west of this site is zoned R3, and we're only seeking R2 in this case.
I just want to make one other note, too, when we're talking about occupancy and parking. We will have a full-time manager on site 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Someone will live on site, as that is their job as the property manager. So any kind of parking or long-term guests was something you were talking about. You know, that's sort of, for lack of better terms, being policed by somebody. It's not out of our office in Clovis and Fresno. You know, there's someone on site who is working on that all the time.
I said last question, but this is my real last question. Are the spots assigned to the residences?
The parking spots?
Mm-hmm.
So that's something we sort of, initially I would say no, but usually when we sort of fill up, we determine if that's needed or not. So a lot of the times with these low affordability levels, people aren't coming with vehicles, which is pretty obvious in those numbers I'm telling you. So they're not coming with vehicles, therefore they don't need a spot, or they just decide they don't need a spot, you know. So it's kind of a case by case.
Probably parking pass would.
Yeah. So they would be allowed to park on the site or give it to, you know, their guests or something like that.
Thank you. Appreciate you answering my questions.
Absolutely.
So my understanding, these units are for lease. Are any of them for sale?
No, they're all rental.
All rental. Okay, will you have access to the alley from both parking lots?
There'll be no access to the alley. The alley in that section has been vacated.
Okay. I think that's all I have for now.
Okay. I'm sorry, did you have a question? Okay. Yes. Follow-up questions. Also, my concern was the parking as well. I actually have experienced, my parents, they retired really early and to another country, and as they gotten older, we brought them back, but they wanted to still remain independent and not live with us, which was fine. So we rented them units here in Clovis, and it's interesting that you mentioned Sierra Ridge because they live there, and they also live at Heartland, and I can tell you that parking was a problem. You're right, not everybody has parking, not everyone has cars, but so my parents were assigned a parking spot. So when I visit, I would drive my car, but if my sister came and I came or another sibling, we'd have to park on the street. And they had limited visitors parking, and they were always full. Like, it was never empty. I've never went there once when there was not a car parked. So I'm not saying that your facility would be that issue, but I had the same problem there, and I had the same issue at Heartland, also on Shaw Avenue.
I just want to make one clarification. I might not have spoke up clearly enough. Silver Ridge is our property, not Sierra Ridge.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I know exactly where, we have no affiliation with Sierra Ridge, neither one of us. Silver Ridge is just up the street here, and it's all one-story seniors.
Yeah, so those were my two experiences. After that, we moved them home and then somewhere else. But anyhow, parking was a problem. So hopefully in your situation it won't be. And one question, why 62? Why not 55 or, you know, something different? Is that, why 62?
It's a funding requirement. Mm-hmm. So part of the funding that we get, 62 and over is the minimum, or 62 is the minimum.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Will you be providing electric charging station?
Yes, by code, I think we have to, and we usually assess the situation and sometimes put in even additional if we need to.
I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any more questions for the applicant? Very good, thank you very much.
Thank you.
At this time, we're going to go ahead and Commission doesn't have any clarifying questions for staff or anything. All right. I'd like at this time to invite comments in support of this project. If you're interested in supporting this project, go ahead and step up to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Okay, seeing none, at this time I'd like to invite comments in opposition of this project. If you'd like to comment in opposition of this project, please step up to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Okay, seeing none, we're going to go ahead and close the public session and invite staff for any clarifying questions or anything that you might have. I did ask for opposition. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you not hear when I said to speak for opposition? Okay. I definitely will give you the opportunity. May we open that up again, please, if they did not hear me stating, calling for opposition? City Attorney, may I open that back up?
Yeah.
Thank you.
There's no issue with that.
Thank you. Okay, very well. Those wanting to speak in opposition, please step up to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and I will let you know we have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hey, my name is Annie Guerrero. I live at 210 Osmond.
Annie, can you speak into the mic so they can hear you, and I will make sure that I speak clearly as well.
Okay, my name is Annie Guerrero. I live at 210 Osmond, and I realize that progress has to come to the city, but I don't think it should come to our neighborhood, because we all have a certain amount of space, like especially for the parking and our families that come to visit us. And I think that this is going to create a big problem for everybody involved. I do not like the fact that now there's apartments down from my property, and the people do not drive like they should. They go too fast, and apparently there's not much we can do about it. And another thing, there's still a few children in the neighborhood, and several times there has been cars going down my Osmond. They're either going to 3rd Street or going home to their apartments, and they drive maybe 40 miles an hour down that street. And that's very dangerous. Not even if, I guess, me crossing the street as a senior citizen, I could get run over easily too. And I just think, you know, I don't oppose apartments for seniors, because I'm one too, you know, so. But I don't think it needs to be in such a big magnitude. They could have 1-story apartments, and that would help for some seniors to live in. And the 2-story ones, that would still bring more traffic problems. And the 3-story is ridiculous, I think, because, my goodness, these people who have homes all along Barron Street and there, they'll be able to look in their yards and everything like that. And when we first, I know when I've lived there many, many years, and I had no idea that something like this would ever happen in my neighborhood, where we would have to decide if we would like to have lots of traffic, you know, a lot more people involved in our neighborhood. It's an old neighborhood, which is very nice. So I just don't think that this type of a project is good for where my home is and other homes are at. There's lots of spaces in Clovis that I'm sure they could find spots to put this particular project. But like I say, one story would be fine. I wouldn't care, but not where it's anymore, because I don't care what the planning commissioner or whatever people do these studies, you know, what they say, or they say, oh no, this will happen and this will happen. At 5 o'clock there'll be so many cars. At 6 o'clock there'll be so many cars, and people will walk down to downtown Clovis. And I'm sorry, that I think people walking downtown Clovis will only happens on Fridays when they have the farmers market. Other than that, people don't walk anymore. So I've added my 2 cents for what it's worth, but I really don't think this is good for our area where I live. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition of this project? Go ahead and step up to the podium. State your name and address for the record.
My name is Rosemary Martinez. I live at 201 Osmond, and I have the same issues with the parking and the traffic, and I just think that it's too small of a piece of land to put all that elaborate stuff there, too many units. Plus the fact that now that the senior center is right there, we have the transit buses coming through on Osmond, down to Osmond to get into the senior center. So we already have extra traffic. So I just don't, like you guys, there's a beautiful unit on Minnewawa and Barstow, and it's gated and it's beautiful, but it's also on very busy streets. So it's not a big deal for the traffic. And that little area right there sure would be great with homes, or even two-story would be good, but still they got to figure out something about the traffic, because the seniors aren't going to walk. I'm a senior, and I walk very not far distances. But on the 3rd Street side of the road, there's no paved sidewalk. You have to walk in dirt and gravel. There's no paved sidewalk to get to Clovis Avenue. You have to go across the street where that new Army, well, I don't know what it is, but that new center right there, and that's how you can't go on the opposite side. And that's where the transit buses were supposed to. When we came last time, they said they were supposed to come in through 3rd Street. Well, they come down Osmond and go up because it's easier. And I just don't think that, I'm not opposed to senior apartments. So there's a bad need for them. But I think, like I said, that piece of property is like trying to get too much stuff in one corner and not thinking out, I'm a senior. I have 2 cars. What if those seniors have 2 cars? My husband and I both have a car, so we're seniors, but we have our house, we park in our driveway. But I believe it will get a lot of overflow on the streets and block our roads. So I would like if you'd consider that is the main issue here, the traffic, the parking, the speed. We know about the speed, but they don't want to do anything about it. And I live on the corner of 2nd and Osmond, and it's not a through street. So people come there, they see it halfway through, they see the sign, they flip a U real fast, and they take off. And so we have traffic already all the time. And we used to have a company over there, Walter Smith, and we had the big semis going through there all night long and in the wee hours of the morning. And now they closed because of the senior center. So I don't know, it would be nice to consider that for those of us that have lived there. I've lived there 54 years. My aunt and all my family have lived there for a long time. And like, progress is necessary, but it needs to go with it. And I don't think this is the right thing for us, for our neighborhood. And the other neighborhoods, Barron, and where there's an alley in between there too, so I don't know where the cars would be going. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in opposition of this project?
My name is Janet Prieto, and I live at 943 Second Street. I've been there over 20 years, and I kind of agree with them. I mean, I like the idea, probably because I'm older, so it sounds good. But it sounds like trying to cramp in a lot in that I don't see it as a real large area. You know, it's kind of small, more on the medium or small side. So I think, and for a developer, I'm sure this doesn't sound good idea, but, you know, if it had a different design where you didn't have so many in a small area. I think of Magnolia, and not that I've ever actually been inside there, and I'm not even sure, it might be, I don't even know what that place is, assisted living maybe or something, so it's different than actual living, older people living. But I just think it has a beautiful look to it, and the parking seems to flow, and the buildings flow really nicely. And I don't know if that's a good idea. And the other thing is, I have a question. I don't know if this is the right time to ask it, but the property behind, you know, like Walter Smith and back there up to the hotel, that's the city's, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? There's vacant land from the back of the hotel to what was Walter Smith. Does that belong to the city? Does anybody know? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I believe I know what land you're referring to, if it's just east of the trail.
Yeah.
That's privately owned by the Benedetto family.
Oh, okay. I always thought, gee, that would be a nice area back there for apartments. Planned now. But basically, it just seems like a lot for, I do like some of their ideas, but it does sound like a lot compacted in that small area. And also, I wonder why there's only two bedrooms and the 3-bedroom, but all the rest are 1-bedrooms. And I wonder why that is, and to me that could, if you have an elderly person, if they need like a family to come stay with them, you know, to help them out, or a caretaker, you know, maybe they need, caregiver. Oh man, maybe the extra bedroom would come in handy. But anyway, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition of this project? Okay. Seeing none, I'd like to invite the applicant for any rebuttals if you want to answer any of those questions, if you want to step up to the podium. Okay. Okay. Applicant is indicating they are not going to do any rebuttals. So at this time, we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to staff. Is there any further clarifying questions on any of the public testimony that you've heard?
Yes, I would like to provide a few points.
Thank you.
The first being that in regards to parking, I just want to give an example that the development standard of a multifamily project would be reviewed for if it came in as market rate under the R2 development standards. So if in a multifamily project came in, they would be held to the standards for studio, 1-bedroom, and 2-bedroom units for 2 spaces per each dwelling unit, with 1 would be covered. And if they came in with 3 or more bedrooms, they would be required 3 spaces for each dwelling unit, and 1 must be covered. So that would be the development standard that would be required if it was an absence of an eligible affordable housing project. And then the second thing I just want to, I'm going to go back one more slide, to reiterate, the proposal tonight is for council's consideration of the general plan amendment and the rezone. The entitlement proposal, along with the afforded density bonus, will be reviewed at the staff level through the site plan review. So again, tonight is the GPA and the rezone. And then I'm available if you have any last-minute questions.
Okay, so as you stated, before us today is just the general plan amendment and the rezone. We are not reviewing at this time any project. You know, basically we looked at this project, but what's before us is the general plan amendment and the rezone.
That's correct, and staff has determined that the proposal is consistent and it does is consistent with the neighborhood and compatible. So we have provided those findings in the staff report with our recommendations.
Very
and then
good.
I think Sean has something.
Okay.
Yeah, Chair and Tuna, I just wanted to, I heard some of the questions about, pedestrian connectivity, and that's something that we're not going to address with the GPA and the rezone, but when it comes for a site plan, we will be considering that, and that is one key feature that we are going to work with the applicant to find a way to connect this site to the transit center, to the senior center, the library, et cetera, in Old Town Clovis.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that.
Just for reference here, all of the streets that are nearby, those are all still public streets that people can park on. They're not
Yeah,
any private.
that's correct, public streets.
Wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
I have a couple questions. I know we're saying we're only voting on the general plan amendment, but procedurally, the catalyst for even prompting or requesting this is the project that we've heard about tonight. So I struggle with that in understanding why are we not bringing that along? Why are we not bringing a project in its totality, the GPA followed by the project? Because really, I feel like it's putting us at a disadvantage here of, hey, let us tell you about this future project, but you're really not considering it, but go ahead and change the general plan because we might build it or we might do something else. And I think it's just prudent for us to understand why we're taking action on the general plan. And we've heard why, but we're not seeing it in a comprehensive item here. So just some feedback for staff. I think that I'd like to see that because some of the questions I've asked this evening are, if we rezone this piece of property, there's no guarantee that anyone's coming along with the project that we've heard about tonight. It could be something different. We could just leave the property exactly as it is, and someone else may want it to do something else with it. We don't know. We heard from the applicant tonight that maybe it's not financially feasible for them to do this type of project, but maybe something else would work. I guess I'd just like to understand, was there a reason that the applicant didn't bring the project along with this GPA request?
It's dependent on the type of entitlement. So we're here to evaluate the GPA and the rezone because that's what's required of that development per the municipal code. A site plan review does not require to be brought before for determination by the Planning Commission unless it's appealed. So that's just part of the processing of the entitlement types.
So there would be no, I know it's not a tract, but there's nothing similar to like a tentative tract map that's proposing how this property would be laid out that could accompany a GPA?
Not in this case. They are proposing a parcel merger to combine the three parcels, but that wouldn't require Planning Commission hearing as well.
Okay. And then could you go back on the slide to the table that talks about, let's see, right there. So the rezone to R2 would be capped at 2 stories. But the density bonus, because of the project type that may come or is intended to come, is what pushes it up to the 3 stories. So again, I think my concern is we're changing the general plan based on the standards, but there's a project that's going to, push it up even beyond that. And I think just, frankly, this was one of my concerns when the project was before us once before, was the density, the amount of parking, the traffic. It just seems like we're trying to put a lot in there, and knowing what's coming helps us understand, I think, the viability of, does this general plan amendment make sense? So, that's what I needed to see. I don't think I have any other questions for staff. Thank you.
Okay. Just really quickly, so the developments that are to the west are multifamily, and they are zoned R4, so those even have a higher density, so we have determined that it's compatible with the surrounding environment.
Okay.
Do we have any further discussion? Okay. I struggle, just as you do, with the density, and the parking is a little bit of an issue for me as well. Then I weigh out the lack of senior housing that we have in this community, and because I've dealt with it, the wait list that we had to be put on to wait for an apartment that was senior housing. I like the fact that they're building a senior, or they're proposing to build a senior community next to the senior center and also in Old Town area. But I do struggle with the density in that area. So, I guess we'll see.
I do hear the concerns about the traffic and the density. I think for us, because we're seeing what could happen with the density bonus, we can't let that weigh in. That's not what, we don't get to vote on that. So in a way, I almost think I don't want to say it was a disservice, but in a way it was a disservice by giving us all that, because that isn't something we can even acknowledge. We have to vote solely on the GPA. And I do see that it is a density increase, given that it's R4 just to the west of it. It is a small lot, but this is something that we desperately need. And not anybody is building it. It's very hard to get it in the city. So I don't have a problem, based on what we're voting on tonight, what's in front of us, I don't have a problem with that.
I think I have the same heartburns as my colleagues here about, I don't know why I always get stuck on traffic, and, but it sounds like you addressed the parking issue, which would be another concern. But I do have some concerns that you brought up as far as, it feels like we're putting the cart before the horse a little bit. So that gives me a little bit of heartburn. However, I just go back to previous meetings where we're focused on what we're actually voting on here, and so we're not really voting on the cart and the horse, so we're just looking at the cart. So I guess I'm okay with moving forward at this point, but you know, it's just I know we do have a need for this. I do suspect that there will be some traffic issues that come up. We have a tendency to kick those down the road, at least in my opinion. And so, you know, for right now, it's, you know, what I'm considering is what's in front of me. And so I think I'm okay with that for now.
All right, I'll just make a few comments then, sorry, because some of my questions were really to staff. There's no question for me that we need this type of housing. Obviously, our population's getting older, people are living longer. I completely understand and appreciate the independence that people want to have, that autonomy, and I think in an environment like what's being proposed here provides that. As I was asking the applicant, you know, I don't have a lot of direct experience with these areas. It seems like parking's always a concern for anything. I've never been in an apartment complex that doesn't have parking issues. And it is usual and customary for it to spill out onto the street. I don't think you'll find one. I do, and I think the applicant made some really good points, you know, this is affordable housing. I don't think we're going to find people with multiple vehicles, maybe, but probably not generally speaking. They're in need of some assistance. We have the means to be able to provide that through these affordable housing programs. My hope is that the net of caregivers and residents and services and things that come into this complex, and individuals that are occupying it without vehicles balance out, else we've created a problem. And so, I look to the city to govern, and do in their site plan review what makes sense. I think it's a shame if we allow, development to proceed without addressing some of these concerns. So we need that, check and balance and site plan review. At the same time, we need responsible applicants that aren't just trying to maximize density and then everything else is dealt with, as it may be. I think Commissioner Hebert said it well. It's probably clouded the situation by presenting the density bonus. I think it's too dense, personally, but I also can't imagine what else is going to go here. I love the proximity to the senior center. I don't know that you're going to find a lot of that. This is an infill lot, so it's not, it's not a corner, it's not a major area that we're trying to overhaul. We're trying to find a way to integrate it, and I think it integrates. I think just the proximity of the senior center alone tips the scale that way. So I think for this evening, as we're voting on a general plan amendment, hearing the city affirm that we have R4 in the surrounding area, which would allow for that, and we're only going to R2 here, I can get behind that. My appeal is to the city and to the applicant, make this make sense for this community, the residents who would live here, the people who already live here, and anyone who's in the vicinity that may experience safety or inconveniences or anything else that could result if we're not smart about how we plan and how we execute a project like this.
Being a senior citizen, I appreciate this development. I get inquiries weekly about housing for seniors. Being in real estate, we see the problem for senior housing, affordable senior housing. And this is what I see in front of us today. And it fits in with what's across the street from it to the west. So I don't see any real problem in that. And the other thing is this property has been in a terrible situation for years, and no other developers have interest in it. You would think that if it was something really neat and whatever, we would see other developers kicking the door down to put housing in there. But it's not. It doesn't meet the area they want to put housing in. And they can't put anything in there to make it affordable in today's market. So I think it is a good project for this area because, as you know, it has been before us before and nothing was ever moved forward. And now we have something that I think will benefit everyone, and mainly the senior citizens, and that's who I push for, as all of you know, that I'm the big campaigner for senior housing and our senior population. So I think the planning department knows what to do to move it forward after tonight.
Okay, any further discussion, or we invite, if not, we invite a motion. No one?
I'll make a motion to approve a general plan amendment 2024-004, a resolution recommending the City Council's consideration of an environmental finding of a CEQA exemption from further environmental review and an amendment to the general plan to redesignate the subject property from the medium density residential designation to the medium high density residential designation.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Hatcher and a second by Commissioner Hebert to approve GPA 2024-004. Commissioner Hatcher,
Yes.
Commissioner Hebert,
Yes.
Commissioner Hinkle,
Yes.
Commissioner Bedstead,
Yes.
Chair Antuna.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
I'll make a motion to approve rezone 2024-003, a resolution recommending the City Council's consideration of a rezone of the subject property from the R1 zone district to the R2 zone district.
I'll second. Oh, go ahead.
I have a motion by Commissioner Hatcher and a second by Commissioner Hebert to approve rezone 2024-003. Commissioner Hatcher,
Yes.
Commissioner Hebert,
Yes.
Commissioner Hinkle,
Yes.
Commissioner Bedstead,
Yes.
Chair Antuna.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
And I have one comment I forgot to say earlier. I want to thank the staff in the city for the opening of the Village Park Green. It went over very well. It was very well received, and it looks really fabulous.
Okay. At this time, if we have nothing else, we adjourn this meeting till the next meeting scheduled for August 22nd, 2024 at 7:11. We're adjourning.
I know you have little kids. I forget you're way younger.